Johannes from Central Valley Ag is our marketing analyst this week. We spoke with Wade on Thursday morning after the USDA released its World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates and crop production reports. We talked about exports, ethanol margins, and selling strategy, but we started with the corn numbers in Thursday's reports.
There were some surprises in this report. They were thinking that there was going to be some larger production numbers, possibly from yield. The yield that came out, 122, was down 0.8 of a bushel from last month's report. That was a little bit bigger cut than what market was anticipating. But on the production side, they actually increased planted acres by 500,000, which resulted in a 300,000 acre increase in harvested acres. So the total crop ended right at 10.7 billion bushels, which in the end was about what the market had anticipated.
On the soybean side, perhaps more surprisingly, with the reaction of the market, more acres, bigger yield, and the market reacts favorably to it.
Yeah, there was a lot of changes in the soybean numbers. First off, yield increased 2.5 bushels up to 37.8. And the big change came in planted and harvested acres, which both increased by 1.1 million. And the total crop increased by 226 million bushels up to 2.86 billion. That was a huge increase and definitely a surprise to the market.
Let's talk about demand in those two areas then. Let's start in corn, then we can kind of branch around here. But exports in corn have been minimal at best. How does that increase, or does it at all?
Yeah, the best way to describe corn export sales right now is there are none. I mean, it's just nothing out there. And a lot of it's due to South America's crop is so much cheaper than the United States crop at this point. If you're China, you can actually get corn delivered from South America cheaper than you can pick it up at the United States. So, where are you going to buy if you're China? It's going to be South America. So in this morning's report, exports were lowered by 100 million bushels. There's probably some more cuts there that can be made in the longer run.
And completely on the other side of that, soybean exports have been out of this world. They raised the export numbers there, but can it continue? Can they get to where they, a huge number? Yeah,
the export sales have been, I think so far for the 2012-2013 marketing year, it's been over 80% is on the books already. So just a huge export sales number so far. But in this morning's report, exports were increased by 210 million bushels, crushed by 40 million bushels. So that huge increase in production was completely offset by a huge increase in demand. And in the end, demand wins the day.
You mentioned China. China had said it was going to produce a large corn crop. The U.S. Grains Council did their tour. They say it's big as well. Does that affect the U.S. market? How much could it affect the U.S. market?
It does in a little, in one sense, in that they're saying that China may not need to import any corn this year. But, in the big scheme of things, exports are such a small drop in the bucket compared to ethanol, compared to feed. It's not a big game changer, but it does add a little bit, or take a little bit of pressure off of the carryout.
Speak to ethanol margins. Any improvement you see there?
It's been brutal. The latest that I've seen is the current spot ethanol margins are the worst in the last 8 years. And grind is just limping along basically. And it's going to be a struggle. Once ethanol plants run out of the sales that or the purchases they made ahead of this fall, it's going to be a tough battle. And I think we're probably going to see more plants slowing down, shutting down.
I think it's safe to say that most analysts believe that a seasonal high will come next year at some point. How do you look at that? Do you agree that we have to wait a few months until we get back to something that could be a record price?
Well, let's just talk with corn right now. I mean, the high for corn was $8.49 on the December board. And, there's a lot of talk. Actually, I just read another analyst this morning that's saying, well, it's inevitable that the market will take out that high and it'll happen next spring. And that might be the case. The thing that we need to remember, though, is everyone is thinking that right now. What if it's not the case? What if something changes that? So with today's rally, I mean, before I came in this morning, corn was up 35 cents, trading right around 770 futures. If you look at your total crop that you have left to sell 10% of it at these kinds of levels. Don't put 100% of what you have open into next spring's rally. We hope it comes, but what if it doesn't?
Beans on the same side. Do you think there's a smaller window here with beans before that crop from South America gets into the market?
Yeah, the thing with soybeans, there's such a wide range of possible outcomes. Just with an average crop in South America, bean market does not have to go any higher. There are going to be some tight windows in terms of logistics in South America. Getting a record crop out of there is going to be a challenge come next March. But I think we need to also be piecing off sales, and I'm a little bit more supportive to friendly in the soybean market than I am in corn, just because of it's easier to shut down ethanol than it is to shut down China.
This report today, is this as volatile as we could see the markets shift in one day with one report or with one news item for quite a while?
Well, you never say never in this industry.
That's true.
Sure.
One news item could shift it to a limit.
What we know today is might not matter tomorrow.
Right.
But you know, generally speaking, the January reports, when they come out with the final supply and demand numbers and the final stocks report for this last crop year, you know, that's usually the big game changer in the market. November, December, the monthly stocks, the supply and demand report, excuse me, that does alter some numbers, but generally speaking, January is the big one.